This is why the avoidant regrets losing the super empath. At first, the avoidant thinks they've won. They've kept their space. They've avoided the messy vulnerability. They've sidestepped those deep, where is this going? Conversations. And when the super empath finally walks away, the avoidant feels relief. But relief doesn't last forever. See, the super empath wasn't just anyone. They were the one person who could read the avoidant without a manual. They saw the walls and didn't get scared. They didn't run away. They found ways to love through the cracks. They gave patience, understanding, and presence, things the avoidant secretly craved but couldn't ask for. And when the empath leaves, not in a dramatic door slamming way, but in that calm, final way, the avoidant doesn't feel abandoned. They feel empty. Because here's the thing, the avoidance pattern only works when someone keeps chasing them. When the chase stops, when the calls go unanswered and the texts no longer arrive, they realize what they lost. They realize the empath's love was rare and that they weren't just loved, they were known. And in that quiet, when the silence stretches out, the regret hits. Not because the empath was perfect, but because the avoidant knows they were loved at a level they might never find again. At first, when the relationship ends, the avoidant feels something they've been secretly craving the whole time: relief. It's that release of pressure, the space to breathe without someone asking them to open up or talk about feelings. In their mind, they've regained control. They've created distance, and distance is their comfort zone. There's no one probing into the emotions they've worked so hard to keep buried. No one holding up a mirror to the parts of themselves they're not ready to face. For a little while, it feels like freedom. They convince themselves that this is exactly what they needed. The absence of emotional demands feels like the absence of stress. But this initial relief is deceptive. Like drinking salt water when you're thirsty, it seems to satisfy something in the moment, but it slowly leaves you emptier and more parched than before. In the first days or weeks, they might even feel a sense of victory. They've avoided those difficult conversations, sidestepped the vulnerability that made them uncomfortable, and escaped the emotional intensity that came with being loved by a super empath. They tell themselves they've done the right thing, that they're better off without all that drama. But what they're calling drama was actually deep connection, and what they're calling peace is just the absence of intimacy. The avoidant thrives on self-protection, so they mistake the lack of closeness for safety. The problem is that safety without connection eventually turns into loneliness. At first, they can distract themselves. They fill their schedule, dive into work, scroll through endless feeds, or even start casual flings that don't require emotional investment. And for a while that works. But distractions are like temporary shelters. They don't protect you forever. Eventually, the storm of reality catches up. There comes a quiet moment, maybe late at night, maybe during an ordinary afternoon, when the mind starts wandering back to what they had. They start to remember not just the relationship itself, but how it felt to be around the super empath. They recall the moments of patience when they were difficult, the understanding when they pulled away, the way the empath gave them space without completely letting go. That's when the first cracks form in the wall of relief. They realize that while the relationship sometimes felt overwhelming, it was also deeply grounding. They remember the look in the empath's eyes, not needy, not demanding, but knowing. And that knowing is rare. The truth is, the relief they felt wasn't about the end of the relationship. It was about the end of their discomfort. But discomfort is often where growth happens. In pushing it away, they also pushed away the person willing to stand by them through it. That's when the nature of their relief starts to change. What once felt like freedom begins to feel like loss. But by the time they notice, the super empath is already gone, and gone for good. The super empath is not just another caring person. They have a way of seeing beneath the surface that can feel almost unsettling at first. Where most people only notice the avoidant's outer shell, the cool distance, the emotional reserve, the super empath notices the small cracks. They see the hesitation before the avoidant says, "I'm fine." They feel the tension in the silence between sentences. They catch the subtle changes in tone or body language that others miss entirely. And they don't use that insight to push or to pry. They use it to meet the avoidant exactly where they are, with patience and presence. This kind of understanding is rare because it's not built on logic alone. The super empath doesn't just understand with their mind, they understand with their whole being. They intuit when the avoidant needs space. And instead of interpreting that as rejection, they take it as a signal to step back gently. They know when to approach and when to hold back, and they do it without resentment. For someone who fears being cornered emotionally, this is a gift. It allows the avoidant to feel seen without feeling trapped. The avoidant may not fully appreciate this at the time. In fact, they might even take it for granted. When someone understands you so naturally, it doesn't feel like effort. It feels like it just happens. And because of that, the avoidant can fall into the illusion that this kind of deep connection will be easy to find again. But it isn't. It's the result of the super empath's emotional intelligence, their patience, and their ability to stay grounded even when the relationship becomes challenging. The super empath also has an unusual ability to validate feelings without enabling unhealthy patterns. They can acknowledge the avoidant's need for space while still encouraging intimacy in small, manageable doses. They're able to make the avoidant feel safe enough to open up, even if just a little at a time, without making them feel weak for doing so. That combination, safety and challenge, is exactly what most people can't offer consistently. Many either push too hard or retreat entirely. The super empath strikes a balance that keeps the relationship alive without suffocating it. When the super empath leaves, the avoidant loses not just a partner, but a translator for their inner world. Without that presence, misunderstandings with others become more common. They may try to connect with new people, but those people won't read them as easily. They won't instinctively know when to lean in or when to give space. They won't be able to decode the unspoken signals. That's when the avoidant realizes that what the super empath offered was more than kindness. It was a form of understanding they may never have again. It's only in that absence that the depth of it becomes clear. The avoidant begins to notice how exhausting it is to explain themselves to others, or how lonely it feels to be misunderstood even in close company. They remember that the super empath didn't just get them. They accepted them, flaws and all, without making them feel broken. And in a world where most people will only ever meet you halfway, losing someone who meets you fully leaves a void that's impossible to ignore. When the super empath is still in the picture, the avoidance pattern runs like clockwork. They create distance, and the empath bridges it. They withdraw, and the empath patiently waits or gently reaches out. The dynamic allows the avoidant to feel in control while still receiving steady doses of connection. It's a strange balance, one person pulling back, the other moving forward, but it works as long as the empath keeps trying. The avoidant gets to maintain their protective walls without ever fully losing the warmth on the other side. But the moment the empath stops chasing, everything shifts. At first, the avoidant might interpret this as exactly what they wanted all along. No more text to answer, no more invitations to decline, no more subtle nudges toward emotional openness. It's quiet now. They can breathe without the weight of expectation. Yet slowly, that quiet starts to change in tone. It goes from peaceful to hollow, from comforting to cold. The avoidant realizes that the chasing wasn't just about the empath's persistence. It was proof that someone cared enough to stay. The absence of pursuit leaves a gap they didn't expect. They might try to fill it with distractions or new interactions, but the difference is impossible to ignore. Other people don't fight to understand them. Other people don't wait patiently for their guard to come down, and while the avoidant might have complained about feeling pressured before, they now see that the pressure was really presence. It was someone showing up over and over again, even when it wasn't easy. When the empath walks away, they usually do it with finality. There's no grand speech, no angry outburst, just a calm withdrawal. They've reached the point where they understand that continuing to chase would only drain them. And because the empath leaves quietly, the avoidant can't comfort themselves with the narrative that the other person was overly dramatic or unstable. There's nothing to dismiss, no excuse to cling to. All that's left is the stark reality that the person who once tried so hard simply stopped. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, that shift can be jarring. They've built their sense of safety on the assumption that people will keep trying even when they pull away. They've relied on that dynamic without realizing how much they depend on it. When it's gone, they're forced to confront a truth they've spent years avoiding. Relationships only survive when both people invest, and one person can't carry all the weight forever. In the silence that follows, the avoidant starts to notice the absence in small, unexpected ways. No one checks in after a long day. No one remembers the little details they once mentioned offhand. No one senses the change in their tone and asks what's wrong. These small losses add up until the avoidant begins to feel something they're not accustomed to admitting. Longing. And that longing is laced with regret because they know the empath's chase wasn't about control or neediness. It was an expression of love they may never receive again. Being truly known is not the same as being liked, admired, or even loved in the generic sense. It's deeper, quieter, and far more vulnerable. To be known means that someone has seen the unfiltered version of you, the moods you try to hide, the fears you don't speak aloud, the quirks and contradictions you assume others wouldn't understand, and they choose to stay anyway. For the avoidant, this is a rare experience. They spend so much energy controlling what others see, keeping the less polished parts of themselves tucked away, that when someone actually pieces together the full picture, it can feel unsettling at first. The super empath has this rare ability. They notice the details that others overlook, but they don't just catalog them, they understand them. They connect the dots between the avoidance behaviors and the deeper emotions driving them. They know when a sarcastic remark is covering hurt, when silence is a form of self-protection, and when detachment is masking fear of loss. The avoidant doesn't have to give them a detailed explanation. The empath simply reads the signals and responds with care. And even more importantly, the empath doesn't weaponize what they know. They don't use the avoidant's vulnerabilities against them or demand instant change. They simply hold space. In the beginning, the avoidant may underestimate how rare this is. They might assume that being understood is something they could find again with someone else, maybe even someone who feels easier to be around. But what they don't realize is that most people only ever see the public version of them. They get the surface, not the depth. Without someone like the super empath, the avoidant can go years without feeling truly recognized at their core. Conversations may be pleasant, relationships may even look good on the outside, but something feels missing, and that missing piece is being known. When the super empath leaves, the avoidant is left with relationships where they have to explain themselves over and over, or worse, relationships where no one even notices there's more beneath the surface. They start to realize that with the empath, they didn't have to translate their emotions into words just to be understood. There was an unspoken language between them, a shared rhythm that made connection feel effortless. Losing that means going back to the exhausting work of guarding themselves while still hoping someone might get them. Over time, the absence becomes more than just emotional. It becomes existential. Without someone who knows them so well, the avoidant can start to feel invisible, even in the presence of others. They remember moments with the empath where they didn't have to pretend or hide, where they could just be. And that memory stings. It's not just that they lost a relationship, they lost the one person who made them feel seen without judgment. And deep down, they know that kind of knowing doesn't come around twice. Silence is a way of magnifying what was once ignored. In the days right after the breakup, the quiet might feel like relief to the avoidant. No buzzing phone, no unread messages waiting for a reply, no subtle pressure to engage when they'd rather retreat. At first, they tell themselves this is what they needed: space, peace, and the freedom to move through their days without emotional demands. But as the days turn into weeks, that silence begins to change. It stops feeling like peace and starts feeling like something missing. It's not just the absence of noise, it's the absence of a presence. The super empath wasn't just another voice in their life, they were the voice that broke through the avoidance walls without force. They could reach the avoidant in moments when no one else could, sensing when something was wrong before it was spoken. Now, without them, there's no check in at the exact moment it's needed, no unexpected text that says, "I thought of you today." The silence is heavier because it's not just quiet, it's empty. For someone with an avoidant nature, that emptiness can be disorienting. They've built their lives around the idea that they don't need constant connection, that solitude is their safe space. But solitude without the safety net of someone who truly understands you starts to feel like isolation. It's in that gap between what they thought they wanted and what they actually feel that regret begins to take root. The quiet moments are the hardest. Late at night, when the world has slowed down, they might think of the little rituals they shared, the goodnight text, the morning check, in the random conversation in the middle of the day that made them laugh. These weren't just habits, they were threads in the fabric of connection, and without them, life feels thinner, less vibrant. The avoidant may not have realized how much they relied on those small points of contact until they were gone. And unlike conflicts or arguments, silence doesn't give them anything to fight against. If the empath had left in anger, the avoidant could have distracted themselves by replaying the argument, blaming the other person, or justifying their own actions. But quiet leaves no defense. It simply sits there, making them aware of the space the empath once filled. It forces them to notice what their life looks like without that steady, loving presence. And often, it's not the picture they imagined. This is when the avoidant begins to understand that silence isn't neutral. It's a reflection of the absence of effort, the end of pursuit, the withdrawal of love. And while they may have once believed they could always find their way back to the empath, the stillness reminds them that some doors close forever. That's the bitter truth of this kind of regret. It doesn't arrive in a dramatic rush. It seeps in slowly, carried by the silence they once thought they wanted, until it becomes impossible to ignore. And so, if there's one thing this all makes clear, it's that the regret of losing a super empath doesn't come crashing in all at once. It builds. It creeps in through the quiet moments, through the absence of understanding, through the emptiness where love once lived. The avoidant may not recognize it at first, but with time, they see that what they let go of wasn't just a relationship. It was a rare kind of connection, one where they were not only loved, but seen, understood, and accepted in a way most people never experience in their lifetime. That's why the loss cuts so deeply, because deep down, they know they didn't just lose someone. They lost the one person who loved them without asking them to be anything other than themselves. And that's a kind of love you can spend the rest of your life searching for and never find again. Thank you for giving me your time and your attention today. If these words have resonated with you, whether you see yourself in the super empath, the avoidant, or somewhere in between, I hope they've offered clarity, compassion, and maybe even a little courage to choose connection over fear. Take care of yourselves and take care of the people who truly see you. Goodbye and thank you.